Let's get started with GUIs. Today I'm going to make a simple application that increments and decrements a number. So it looks like this. We have a label called value, then we have a text field starting off with the number 4, and we have two buttons, one to make 4 go down to 3, and one to make 4 go up 1 to 5. Okay? So first things first, I'm going to create a new project in NetBeans. So it's a new JavaFX application. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to untick this create application class. I'm going to name this Lab 8 2019 Autumn and hit finish. The first thing you want to do to make sure your project works with Plate is right click it, go to properties, go to packaging, and where it says exclude from Java file, just remove the Java part. Or you could just remove the entire thing. And this will make sure that Plate works. Alright. So I'm going to create my main class of IncDec. So right click default package, new Java class, and I'll hit finish. So the first thing we want to do with JavaFX is we want to change our main class to extend the application class. Application class lives inside of JavaFX.application. So if you hit Alt Enter, this window pops up to import the packages. So I want to import the first one that says JavaFX. Next, I'll create my public static void main, and in this, all we are putting in is launch args. Nothing else needs to go into there. Next, we'll create a method called start. Public void start, and it starts with a stage. We'll also import the stage, which is in JavaFX. And we are overriding this method, so I'll put the @override annotation on it. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to firstly create the leaf nodes, then we're going to create the branch nodes. We're going to set up our event handlers, and finally we're going to set the scene. So those are our 4 steps for this project. Let's start with the leaf nodes. So the leaf nodes here are these 4 main elements. We have a label, a text field, and 2 buttons. So I'm going to create them. I'm going to make some private fields. So we have a label. I'm going to call it value LBL. Make sure you import everything. Note java.awt. Do not import java.awt. AWT is an old UI framework. We're using JavaFX, so make sure to only import JavaFX. We need a text field, so that's the thing you enter text into. I'm going to call it value TF. Note the way I name these variables. We're going to put values into this, and it is a text field. So it's just helpful to put the suffix on. Next, we have 2 buttons. We have a decrement button, and we also have an increment button. Once I've created all those declarations, let's actually initialize them. Oops. So our value label is a new label, and inside it will just be value. Our value TF will start off with a number 4. And our decrement button has -1 in it, and the increment button has +1 in it. Cool. So those are what we call the leaf nodes. Now, where do leaves sit? Well, they sit on a branch. Okay, so the branch is the thing that groups all the leaf nodes together. In JavaFX, there are many branch nodes, but the one that looks most applicable to this is called the H box, or horizontal box. because you can see how all of these are aligned horizontally. So the HBox gives us that ability to align things horizontally. So I'll create a new HBox, and I will import it. And the syntax for HBox just allows me to list out all the things inside it from left to right. Just like that. I'll set up the event handlers later. Let's first get this showing. So JavaFX has a scene and a stage. So we put all the props in the scene. So the HBox holds all our leaf nodes, and our scene will hold the HBox. So we create a new scene with the HBox, and we import it. Next, we put that scene onto the stage. Stage.setScene scene. And lastly, we draw back the curtains and show the stage. So JavaFX kind of has this theatre analogy going on it. Alright, let's start this. And looks like it worked. We have a value, we have a text field, and we have two buttons. Currently the buttons do nothing, but they are buttons. Let's make this look a bit more like the example. See how there's some spacing between the buttons, and also value is aligned to the center. One of the coolest things about NetBeans is you can check the documentation for things just by hitting Alt F1. So I'm going to click on this, hit Alt F1, wait a couple seconds, and this will show me the documentation for the HBox. If we look down here, the second constructor for HBox actually has spacing. So it has a spacing and then it has the leaf nodes. So let's put the spacing in here. I'm going to give it a spacing of, say, 10. That's looking pretty good. And also the HBox controls the alignment of all the nodes inside it. So I will use a function called setAlignment to the center. Perfect. Okay, next let's set up the button handlers. So I'm going to take the decrement button and I'm going to use something called setOn, and we can see all of these events that JavaFX allows us to use. The one we're interested in is setOnAction. So in setOnAction, that's when we action the button. It's not called setOnClick because you might be using, say, a touch screen or some other input device, right? So setOnAction allows you to get the input from any source. So setOnAction is what we want. Here I will put, I'll make a new class, a new inner class, and I'm going to call it the decrement button handler. So in JavaFX, whenever you have an event handler, you need to make it implement the event handler interface. Because we are using setOnAction, we have an event handler for an action event. And I will import those. Make sure to use JavaFX, and I will import all the events. Cool. One nice thing about NetBeans is we can generate a lot of code. So I'm going to hit Alt Insert here, implement method. I'm going to ask it to generate this handle method. So this is the method that's going to be called when we click on that button. To demonstrate it working, let's print something out. This works. So we've created a class, but we haven't actually linked up this class to the button yet. So to do that, we create a new instance of the decrement button handler. Note the console. Seems like it's going well. Okay. So we've created the button handler, but let's actually get it working. So when we hit -1, what we want to do is we want to get this value here. We want to take one off it, and then we want to set the value of the text field to that new value, don't we? So there's really three steps here. There's get the value, take one off, set the new value. Those are our three steps. So let's create the get the value method. So whenever you have a text field, it's good practice to make a getter and a setter for that text field. So I'm going to make a method called get value. It's going to return int and has no parameters. All we're going to do is get our text field, and we're going to get the text from the text field. So the text field has something called a text property, and we can get the text property by using get text. Now we don't want to get the text though, because text is a string. We want to get it as an integer. So we have to convert this string to an integer. And we can do that in Java with integer.parseInt. Just like that. So that will get us the value of the text field as an integer. Alright. Let's take one off. So I'll -1 off the value. And now we need to set the new value. So let's create a setter. So setters don't return anything, but they will have a parameter, and that's the new value we want to set. So value tf. Now one nice thing about JavaFX is whenever you see something like get text, there's likely a set text. So we want to set the text to the new value. Now we can't do that because it wants us to set a string, right? But we have an int. So how do we convert an int to a string? Well, we can add it on to an empty string. And I'll use my set value. And it looks like it works. Okay. Let's do the same with the increment button. But instead of using an inner class, I will use a anonymous inner class. So how anonymous inner classes go is you take the thing you're implementing. So for action events, we have an event handler for an action event. And we create a new event handler for an action event. Like that. Again, I'll get NetBeans to implement my handle method. And now can you see why this is called an anonymous class? Here we actually created like explicitly a class. We gave it a name. And then when we use it, we go new that name. But here, we've just created a new event handler directly. There's no name attached. So that's why it's called anonymous. In here, we'll do the same same steps, but I'll actually just do it in one go. So we're getting the value, we're adding 1, and we're setting that value. So that's the exact same thing, but just in one line. Seems like it works. We can actually put any value in here we want, and it all still works. So that's great. Now this is an anonymous inner class. What about a lambda expression? This, how many lines is this? This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines. And there's just so much extraneous pieces of syntax here that we actually don't need. And this is where lambda expressions come in handy. So what do we need a lambda expression? We need the parameter called event. Event goes to, and then we have our body. Just like that. One line of code, and these mean the exact same thing.